For generations, the Qatar Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe has stood as one of the most prestigious horse races on earth. It is Europe's richest race. It is a championship that defines legacies. It is a stage where racing immortality is earned. And now, after years of controversy, argument, and mounting pressure from across the racing world, one of the sport's most famous traditions is finally coming to an end. Starting in 2027, Geldings will be allowed to compete in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. For many racing fans, this announcement is nothing short of historic. For others, it is long overdue. And for the horses that inspired this change, it may represent the opening of a door that should never have been closed in the first place. Today, we're diving into the remarkable story behind one of the biggest rule changes in modern European horse racing, the champions who helped force the conversation, the reaction from fans around the world, and what this decision could mean for the future of one of the sport's most iconic events. As of June 24, 2026, the racing world is still digesting the implications. And the consequences could be enormous. To understand why this moment matters, we first need to understand what made the Arc so special. The Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe is not just another horse race. Held annually at Longchamp Racecourse in Paris, France, it has long been considered the ultimate test of thoroughbred excellence in Europe. Winning the Arc can elevate a horse from champion to legend. The race attracts elite competitors from across the globe. Owners dream of winning it. Trainers build entire seasons around it. Breeders view success in the Arc as a golden ticket to future generations. But buried within this celebrated tradition was a rule that increasingly stood out as unusual in modern racing. Geldings were not allowed to participate. For viewers unfamiliar with the terminology, a gelding is a male horse that has been castrated. Many of the world's most successful racehorses have been geldings. In fact, some of racing's most beloved champions throughout history competed as geldings. Yet despite their accomplishments, the Arc remained closed to them. The reason dated back to the race's historical connection to breeding. Many major races were originally designed not only to determine champions but also to identify future stallions and broodmares. A victory in a race like the Arc dramatically increases a horse's value as a breeding prospect. Because geldings cannot reproduce, some traditionalists believe they should not compete in races that served as showcases for future breeding stock. For decades, that reasoning remained largely unquestioned. But the racing world was changing. And eventually, the pressure became impossible to ignore. Across Europe, restrictions on geldings gradually began disappearing. One prestigious race after another opened its doors. The argument was straightforward. The goal of elite racing should be to identify the best racehorse, regardless of breeding value. If a horse is talented enough to compete at the highest level, why should its eligibility depend on whether it can become a stallion? Many fans embraced that logic. Many trainers embraced it too. Over time, major races throughout Europe modernized their rules. One notable milestone came in 2020 when the Prix du Moulin opened to geldings. The change was widely accepted. The sky did not fall. The integrity of the race remained intact. Competition arguably became stronger, yet the Arc remained one of the final holdouts. Its continued exclusion of geldings increasingly appeared out of step with the rest of the sport. Year after year, questions resurfaced. Year after year, critics pointed to exceptional horses who would never get the chance to compete on racing's grandest European stage. Then came two horses who changed everything. Their names were Goliath and Calendogan. Both trained in Chantilly by Francis Graffard, these horses became central figures in the debate. Not because they campaigned for rule changes. Not because they sparked controversy through words. But because of what they did on the racetrack. They performed at a level that made exclusion harder and harder to justify. Their achievements forced fans, journalists, trainers, and racing executives to confront an uncomfortable question. What happens when some of the best horses in Europe are not even allowed to enter Europe's most important race? The discussion grew louder. Industry insiders began openly questioning whether tradition was standing in the way of fairness. Supporters argued that the Arc should feature the strongest possible field. Critics of the restriction pointed out that fans wanted to see champions compete against champions. And increasingly, the evidence seemed overwhelming. The sport was denying itself potentially historic matchups. As Goliath and Calendogan continued to excel, their absence from Arc conversations became impossible to ignore. What if they could run? What if they could challenge the very best? What if fans were being deprived of one of the most compelling sporting contests imaginable? Those questions gradually evolved into calls for action. Behind the scenes, discussions intensified. France Gallup, the governing authority responsible for French horse racing, found itself at the center of a growing debate. Executives faced a difficult balancing act. On one side stood tradition. On the other stood modernization. On one side stood decades of precedent. On the other stood a changing racing landscape demanding greater inclusivity.